Hello, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for being here. That was super sweet of you, and welcome back to another episode of early 2000s movies and makeup, except we're talking about a 90s movie again. I gotta think of a new name for this series because I've been enjoying the 90s movies so far, and like I said in the last video, it's really just all about nostalgia for me. It's just gotta be like a minimum of 10 years old, so maybe I'll call it nostalgia and makeup. I don't know, but that's not what this video is about. Today, we are talking about The Craft. The Craft is a movie about witches learning to harness their power, and also about how any magic you do unto others will come back to haunt you threefold. The movie came out in 1996 and stars Fairuza Balk as Nancy Downs, Robin Tunney as Sarah Bailey, Neve Campbell as Bonnie, and Rachel True as Rochelle. This movie is nuts. This is definitely the scariest movie that I've covered in this series so far. Well, not necessarily scary. I wouldn't say it's like an like you're gonna have nightmares type of thing. It's more like disturbing type of scary. So if you're a wimp like me and you typically can't do scary movies, I think you'll be able to handle this one. Don't worry. But I am gonna give a trigger warning right off the bat that this movie does deal with some themes of self-harm and attempted suicide. It mentions it a few times in the movie. I am only going to mention it when it is absolutely necessary to get the point of the plot across, but I will be sure to put trigger warnings on the screen. I'll put timestamps of when you can skip ahead, and I also will be vocalizing those trigger warnings. But if that's something that you don't want to hear right now, please skip this video. That's totally fine. I'll link Hocus Pocus on the screen. Go watch my Hocus Pocus video. But if you do decide to watch this video, oh my gosh, this movie is a cult favorite for a reason. Fairuza Balk is so freaking good. She is a force to be reckoned with. She plays Nancy Downs. I know I just said it, but she plays Nancy Downs, and Nancy Downs is such an iconic character. The fashion, the acting, the makeup, all of it. I am so excited to do Nancy Downs makeup. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna wear so much black eyeliner. I'm so thrilled. But the movie is just so good. It's not your average witch movie. It's not kitschy at all. I mean, these are modern witches, and they are terrifying but fashionable, and I love it so much. But that's enough rambling. Why don't we do a blood ritual and invoke the spirit of Madone, because we're getting into The Craft right now. So normally at this point, I like to give my little disclaimer that I'm not going to be doing my makeup exactly like the character because I'm more dramatic than most of the makeup done in movies. But with this movie, I'm probably going to be just as dramatic as Nancy normally has her makeup. Am I probably going to make my eyeliner a little bit more graphic than Nancy's in the movie? Yes, I am. But I'm going to try to stay mostly true to her makeup. Can you see how dark my eyebrows are already? I already went for that. I'm obsessed with this choker. Oh my gosh, it is so cool. I feel like such a badass. I got my little skull earrings and my little black nails. Oh, she's a little witchy girl. Okay, that's enough about that. If you're curious about any of the products that I'm using today, as always, I will list them in the description box down below. Now let's get into the movie. So the movie starts out with three teenage girls sitting in a gazebo surrounded by candles and crystals and pentagrams, and they are chanting, "Now is the time, this is the hour, ours is the magic, ours is the power." To be honest, looks like a really fun time. Sounds like a great way to spend a Friday night. Well, maybe minus the pentagrams. I'm not so sure I would want those. But crystals and candles, my literal favorite things. Okay, anyways, we're quickly establishing that these girls might be into some witchcraft. I don't know. That's the vibe I'm getting. And after that scene, we meet Sarah. Sarah just moved from San Francisco to Los Angeles, and you can tell she's not so thrilled about the move. This house that they moved into is absolutely gorgeous, but definitely a little eerie feeling, and immediately as soon as they move in, weird stuff starts happening. As Sarah's unpacking her stuff and her dad's in another room, all of a sudden this guy just shows up to the front door, and he's holding a snake, telling her that he had a dream about her, and Sarah starts screaming. Her dad runs out, pushes the dad away, the snake comes inside, the dad has to stab the snake with like a fire poker thingy. So, you know, a lot of drama happening right from the bat in this new house. But the next day, Sarah has her first day at her new school, and when she's in her first class, she's in a French class. Bonnie, who is one of the girls that was doing the rituals in the first scene of the movie, notices that Sarah starts balancing a pencil using her mind. Like, she's just looking at this pencil and she's balancing it. It's like standing up on the point, and Bonnie's like, whoa, hello, that seems a little witchy to me. And so after that class, Bonnie meets up with her friends, and she's like, she's here. This is the girl we've been waiting for, because they had been previously previously looking in their witch's almanac. I don't think that's what it's called, but it is an almanac, and the almanac told them that they should be expecting a 4th member of their group, and that they need this 4th member of their group to truly harness their power. Oh, and in the next class, they actually all have biology together, all of the witchy girls and Sarah tries to go up to them and ask if she can join their lab group, and Nancy's like really rude and standoffish towards her and like just doesn't say anything, and they basically just ignore her, so she walks away. Then at lunch that day, one of the boys from her French class, Chris, comes and sits down with her. He was one of the popular boys in the French class that was just like goofing off the whole time, you know, real rude jock type of guy. And he starts talking to Sarah, and she's being kind of standoffish to him, and she apologizes and says, "I'm sorry, I'm just having a tough first day and nobody's really been nice to me here, especially not those girls." And so she points to Bonnie, Nancy, and Rochelle, and immediately Chris is like, "Oh, you better stay away from those girls." But he says that they're actually witches and she should definitely stay away from them. He then asks her to come to his football practice after school to watch him play, and Sarah actually does end up going to his football practice, but she's not really watching. She's kind of just like watching from a distance from the fence when she's approached by the witches. I don't know what to call them. I'm like, no one ever really refers to them as the witches, but it's the group of 3 girls. It's Nancy, Bonnie, and Rochelle. It's the witches. I'm gonna be referring to them as the witches. We know they're witches by this point. It's the craft, baby. Come on, get with it. But anyway, she gets approached by the witches, and Nancy immediately is like, "That guy's a jerk. You definitely don't want to hang out with him." And Sarah's like, I wasn't hanging out with him. Like, I just not, well, I don't know. I'm not really doing anything. Oh, this choker is choking me." And then Nancy asks Sarah to go shopping with them, and Sarah agrees, so they head off to go shopping. And this next part, I tried to cut out, but it does come back later and gets confusing if I don't say it, so I am going to give a trigger warning of self-harm here. I am going to put a timestamp on the screen so you can skip ahead to not hear this part. So yeah, in this next part, when they're on their way to go shopping, Nancy notices that Sarah has some scars on her wrists, and she asked her about them, and Sarah is very honest with them and lets them know that she gave them to herself because when she lived in San Francisco, she did try to end her life. But Nancy thinks it's very cool and punk rock, and that's really the end of them talking about that. They don't talk about it any further for a while, but I'm just saying it now because it does come back later, and if you don't hear it explained now, then you will be confused. Okay, and now the girls are off to go shopping, and they go to this really cool like apothecary slash like witchy store. They never call it an apothecary, it just seems like an apothecary to me. They have a bunch of candles and different ingredients and a bunch of like spell books and whatnot. Honestly, it looks so cool, would love to go there. And at the apothecary, they meet the owner of the store, whose name is Lirio, who immediately notices Sarah's ring and can somehow tell that Sarah got it from her mother. But Lirio ends up giving Sarah a book called The Craft and tells her to read it. Hey, that's the name of the movie! And she tells her to read it, and the girls leave the store. And after they leave the store, they end up going to downtown LA, and they're just kind of walking around when Sarah runs into the guy who came into her house earlier. Do you remember I told you when Sarah first moves into the house, weird stuff starts happening? That guy showed up with a snake. Well, the guy is on the streets of downtown LA, and he has the snake again, and he starts chasing Sarah, telling her that he needs to tell her something. And of course she's terrified. There's this random guy chasing her, so she starts running away, and she's able to run across a busy street. And when he chases after her, she stares at him really, really hard, and suddenly he gets hit by a car. And when she finally reunites with the girls, they all run off to the woods after this happens. They all turn to each other and say, "Did you think about the car hitting him?" And they all were thinking the same thing, and they all decide that that was their collective magic that caused the car to hit him, and that Sarah definitely is the 4th power that they've been waiting for, and that all of their power is more powerful when they're together. Alright, gonna zoom in so I can do a little eye makeup here. So now Sarah's like, okay, I might be buying into this magic stuff a little bit now, and Nancy starts telling Sarah all about Madone, and Sarah immediately thinks she's talking about like Satan or like some demonic force, and Nancy explains to her that Madone is not God or the devil. He is not good or evil. He is everything, and she compares it to
if God and the devil were playing football, Manor would be the stadium that they played on. It would be the sun that shone down on them.
So he's really like connected to nature, and Nancy tells her that if you can invoke the spirit of Madone, then you can make everything about your life better. And this sets Sarah off. This really starts to freak her out. She says, "You guys are freaking me out," and she leaves. And after she leaves, she ends up going to hang out with Chris, the football guy from earlier, and they start hanging out, and he starts kissing her, and she kind of stops, and you know, she's not really that interested in it, and he asks her if she wants to go back to his house, you know, clearly implying he wants to do a little bit more than kissing, and Sarah doesn't want to, so she just tells him, she says, "Oh no, I'm sorry, I have to go home," and he says, "Oh, it's okay," but you can tell, like, it's not really okay, and she says, "Are you mad?" And he goes, "Oh no, I'm not mad," but you can tell that he's like really mad. So the next day at school, Sarah gets approached by Nancy again, who lets her know that Chris is telling everybody that they hooked up last night and that Sarah was the lousiest lay that he ever had. And this is really upsetting to Sarah. She goes up to Chris and she tries to confront him about it, but he just completely disregards what she's saying and acts like she's obsessed with him.
"I don't want to go out with you again. Please stop begging, it's pathetic."
And so now she's mad, but you know, she finally believes what the girls were saying about him being a jerk before, so she's back in with their circle. So the next two scenes are to help us to get to know the witches a little better. So we have a scene at Rochelle's swim practice where she's trying really hard to focus on doing her dive, but these bullies keep distracting her. They keep making little snarky comments about her, and in the locker room they make a really racist comment about Rochelle's hair and about Rochelle in general, and so that's to establish that Rochelle has these racist bullies who are always bugging her at her swim practice. And then we also have a scene with Bonnie at a doctor's appointment of hers, because Bonnie has this condition. I'm not sure if it was caused by an accident, it never really gets explained, but Bonnie has these really severe burns all over her body, so she is currently going through treatment to try to get rid of the burns or to try to help heal her scars. And then we go to Nancy's house, where you can clearly see that Nancy comes from a very broken home. She lives with her mom and her stepdad didn't pay the electric bill, so their lights turn off. He's also very verbally and physically abusive to her mom, so it's just really a bad home situation for her. So after all of these little side scenes happen, we cut to school the next day, where Nancy tells Sarah that they're going on a field trip. So they get on this bus and they drive out to kind of an undisclosed location. I don't think they ever say where it is, but it's definitely in a more mountainous, nature-y area. It's outside the city for sure. And when they're getting off the bus driver tells them to be careful, girls, look out for the weirdos. And Nancy turns to him and says,
"We are the weirdos, mister."
Iconic. We love it. I love that line. And then once they get out into this field, kind of in the middle of nature, they begin doing this ritual to gain each other's trust. And the ritual says,
"It is better that you should rush upon this blade and enter this circle with fear in your heart." How do you enter? With perfect love and perfect trust.
Then they all prick their fingers with the blade, and they all pour some blood into this cup with wine, and then they all drink the wine and the blood, which is a little gross for me, but you know what? I understand it's a ritual, totally get it. That's how the magic's gonna work. And then they all go around the circle and they start saying the things that they wish for, although I guess it's not really like wishing for, it's more like what they want to do with this magic, what they're hoping to gain from this ritual. And so as they're going around the circle, Bonnie says that she wants to be beautiful on the inside and outside, because remember I said she has all of those scars, which she's still beautiful even with her scars. You're absolutely beautiful, Bonnie, but she wants to feel beautiful on the outside as well as the inside. Rochelle wants to be free from the racist bullies on her swim team, and she wants to not care what they think anymore. And Sarah wants to have Chris love her, which is stupid. It's absolutely stupid. Everybody tells her it's stupid. She knows that it's stupid too. She wants to both love herself and have others love her as well, like Chris. You know, she barely knows him and he's such a jerk, but anyway, she wants Chris to love her. And then when it gets to Nancy, she just says that she wants the power of Madone, and then she drinks the rest of the wine, and everyone's like, that's it? You don't want to wish for something more specific like we all did? So the next day at school, Chris will not leave Sarah alone, which, like, remember before he was telling her to leave him alone, and now suddenly he won't leave her alone, and he basically basically just starts doing whatever she says. He's just doing whatever she wants, showing that the spell is working. Then to help out with Rochelle's part of her wish, remember Rochelle wished that the racist girls from her swim team would leave her alone. Sarah ends up stealing one of the hairs from like the lead girl who's mean to her, whose name is Laura. She rips one of her hairs out and they're gonna use it for a spell. And so Rochelle goes to Sarah's house and Sarah is braiding the hair into Rochelle's. They don't really explain why. I guess that's part of the ritual. But Rochelle notices that Sarah has a picture on her bedside table and she asks her who the picture is of, and Sarah lets her know that it's her mom, and unfortunately her mom died during childbirth. Now the next day at school, when Rochelle goes to swim practice, her bully gets done doing her dive, and when she takes off her swim cap, all of her hair starts falling out. So now that's showing us that Rochelle's magic is working as well. And then later on that day, when Bonnie goes back to her follow-up doctor's appointment, they're going to look at her scars. But when she looks at Bonnie's scars and starts to, you know, kind of wipe away the dead skin, she has completely fresh new skin underneath and all of her scars have completely healed. And so at this point, all the girls are super happy that it seems like Madone listened to them and their spells are working. Well, all of the girls except for Nancy, because her spell hasn't worked yet. So she goes home, she's all bummed and upset. You know, like I mentioned earlier, she comes from a broken home, she does not have a good home life, and her stepdad starts yelling at her mom and he goes to hit her mom, and before he does, Nancy just starts screaming, and as she does, there's like a burst of flame over the stove, and then her stepdad has a heart attack and dies. And after he dies, Nancy and her mom go to meet with this, like, I don't know what you call it, maybe a financial advisor, I guess, to talk about his pension package, because apparently their stepdad had been working for a long time and had this pension, and that meant that Nancy and her mom were left with $175,000, which is awesome because they could finally afford to move out of their trailer and move into a nice apartment together. And so now the magic is working for her too. And so now all of the girls go to Nancy and her mom's nice new apartment to check it out. But when they get there, Nancy wants them to work on a new spell that she learned about. And this spell or ritual is called a glamour. And basically a glamour is an illusion that is so realistic that it can fool an onlooker. And as soon as Sarah hears this, she's like, yeah, I think I can do that. So they decide to give the spell a try. So she turns her hair color from brown to blonde. What an iconic scene. So freaking cool. So later on that night, when Sarah is back at her house, Chris shows up to her house at 3 in the morning. Remember before I mentioned that Chris was like obsessed with her? Well, now he's taken his obsession to a new level. He's standing outside her house at 3 in the morning, professing his love for her, saying that he wants to move in together and that he can't stop thinking about her. He can't eat, he can't sleep, he feels sick to his stomach. And now Sarah's starting to get a little freaked out by this. She's like, you know what? This seems like it's a little too much. This is really not what I wanted. So the next day, the girls go to the apothecary and Sarah asks the owner, Enrico, if she can help her reverse a love spell. And Enrico basically tells her that, like, sorry, that's not possible. You have to just let the spell run its course. You can't reverse a love spell. And she also lets them know,
whatever you send out, you get back ×3.
Letting them know that even though you might get what you want initially, it's gonna come back to bite you. Nancy isn't swayed by this at all though. She ends up buying a book on how to invoke a spirit, and then she takes the girls to the beach so that they can try invoking the spirit of Madone. So at the beach, they start doing the ritual to try to invoke Madone, and all of a sudden a storm starts brewing, a big burst of lightning strikes, and it ends up striking Nancy. And then suddenly we cut to the next day when all of the girls are waking up. I guess they knocked them out. This ritual was so powerful, and all of the girls wake up and suddenly they notice that Nancy is walking on water. When she gets to the beach, she tells them that she can feel Madone in her. She can feel him in her veins. She is his daughter. He is living through her. And then they hear police sirens, so they walk to the other side of the beach. They're kind of in a more secluded area behind some rocks, and when they walk to the other side of these rocks, they can see that all of the sharks have washed up on the beach. beach. It's really, really horrifying, but Nancy thinks it's very cool. She starts going over to the sharks and screaming about these are gifts for her. Madone gave her these gifts because she is his daughter and he is living through her, and it's really starting to freak Sarah out. So after they leave the beach and they are driving back home, Sarah starts talking to the other girls about how she feels like this is all becoming a bit too much. She just wanted Chris to like her, and now he's humiliating himself in front of her. And she also brings up what Lirio said at the apothecary, which is that they're getting back what they wanted threefold. You know, in her situation, all she wanted was for Chris to like her, and now he's obsessed with her and won't leave her alone. This also presents itself in an example when Rochelle goes to her next swim practice, and the girl whose hair started falling out is falling out even more, and she sees her having like a breakdown about it in the bathroom, and she starts to feel bad for her. You know, she also didn't want her to bully her anymore, but she didn't want her to be this miserable either. And Sarah's situation gets even worse later because Chris keeps calling her. He will not leave her alone. He really wants to hang out with her. So finally she just gives in to get him to stop calling her. And when they hang out, he tells her that he feels like they're one person, like they're the same person. And that really freaks her out. So she tries to leave, but when she tries to leave, he chases after her and attempts to assault her. And luckily she's able to get away, so nothing happens, but she immediately runs to the girls after this and tells them everything. So when she gets to the house and starts telling the other girls, Nancy immediately wants to go confront Chris. So she runs off to go find Chris, and when she gets to the party, she ends up pulling Chris aside because as soon as he sees her, you know, he knows that Nancy is Sarah's friend, and he's like, where's Sarah? Do you know where Sarah is? He's still just like stuck in this trance. He's obsessed with her, and Nancy pulls him into the bedroom and she starts coming on to him. She's trying to get him to hook up with her, but remember, he's obsessed with Sarah. He's literally under a spell, so he just keeps rejecting Nancy's advances, telling her that he does not want her, he wants Sarah. And rather than just accepting this, rather than just taking the L and accepting that the boy you like doesn't like you back, instead Nancy does a glamour. Remember I explained a glamour earlier is an illusion that is so believable that the onlooker or the person who it's being done to cannot tell the difference between the illusion and reality. So Nancy makes herself look like Sarah, and as soon as Chris sees her looking like Sarah, he's in a trance again, so he's totally down to do whatever she wants. They start hooking up, but finally the other girls arrive at the party because they did run after Nancy, and Sarah ends up walking into the room, walking in on Chris and Sarah, who is really Nancy, hooking up, and Nancy then breaks the illusion and goes back to herself. And then Chris is like freaking out. He's like, you're a witch, you're a real witch, oh my god. And Nancy's like, well, I'm a witch, but she's a witch too. The only reason that you like her is because she put a spell on you. And that's when Chris says, no it's not, you're just jealous. And then Nancy says her most iconic line of the movie, in my opinion.
Jealous? Jealous? You don't even exist to me!
And as you can hopefully see from that clip I just put in, Nancy is getting really worked up at this point. Like, she's really getting so viscerally angry at him. And so Chris gets scared and he starts apologizing to her, but it's too late. She is so upset, and also remember, she's harnessed the power of Madone, so she's feeling pretty powerful at this point, and she uses her magic to push him out the window, and he dies. And this really freaks out Sarah. I mean, this freaks her out so much. The police came to her house and they questioned her, so she's feeling like she's done with these gals. She does not want to be a part of the circle anymore. But then the next day at school, Nancy and Bonnie and Rochelle all approach Sarah in the bathroom, and they start talking to her about, you know, how they can tell that she wants out of the circle. They can tell that she doesn't want to be a part of it anymore. And they also tell her that she should probably leave the school if she's not going to be a part of their circle anymore. And more than that, she should probably leave their city and maybe even the planet, and reminds her that back in the old days, if a witch betrayed her coven, they would kill her. So Sarah ends up going back to the apothecary to talk to Aurico. She tells her everything that's going on. She's really the only person that she can confide in who will understand this type of stuff. And Aurico offers to help her, and she tells Sarah that the only way that she's going to be able to get away from Nancy, or the only way that she's going to be able to protect herself, is to harness the power of Madone. She needs to invoke the spirit. And this really freaks Sarah out because obviously she saw what happened to Nancy when she invoked the spirit. She's not really interested in invoking the spirit, but Aurico ends up telling her that her mom was a witch, that Sarah's mom was a witch. She can tell just by looking at her somehow. I mean, obviously Aurico's a witch too, so she's able to tell. And she tells Sarah that she can see this light in her, and it's more powerful than she's seen in any other witch before, and she knows that if she invokes the spirit that she can protect herself and her family. So they start invoking the spirit, they start doing the ritual, but then Nancy shows up and Sarah is just terrified. So she storms out of the apothecary and she runs back to her house, and when she gets back to her house she's looking for her dad and her stepmom, but they're not there. And all of a sudden the phone rings, and when she picks up it's Nancy, and Nancy tells her that her dad and her stepmom took a flight back to San Francisco because they thought that Sarah had run away there. And then she tells them that something very tragic happened and tells Sarah to turn on the news. And when Sarah turns on the news, she sees that a plane crashed on its way from LA to San Francisco, and that it was the plane that her family was on. So this is absolutely devastating to Sarah. She throws the phone, she runs outside, but when she gets outside there's all of these rats and snakes and worms and bugs absolutely everywhere. She's terrified. And so Sarah comes back inside because obviously all that stuff outside is scaring her, and she's running around the house, and now all of the bugs and rats and everything are inside too. So she ends up running into her bathroom where boo, Nancy shows up. She shows up and goes, "Gotcha." And as soon as Nancy shows up, all of the creatures are gone, you know, clearly showing that this was Nancy's doing. This was Nancy's magic that made all of these things appear. So after Nancy try to talk while doing this lip liner, it's not gonna work. So after Nancy runs off, Sarah follows her downstairs, and all of the other girls are there too, and they're horrifying. They're all like floating in her living room. It's very scary, and I'm going to give my last trigger warning of the video. We are going to talk about self-harm / suicide attempt one more time, and I will give you a moment to leave and click to the timestamp. But all the girls are like floating and looking really scary, and Nancy tells Sarah that she is going to kill herself tonight. And then Nancy actually ends up pulling out a knife and slashing Sarah's wrists, and Sarah immediately runs away. She runs upstairs to her room, and when she gets to her room she's lying on the ground, she's like bleeding out, and she starts invoking the spirit. She starts doing the ritual, she starts chanting, trying to invoke the spirit. And then Nancy sends the other girls, Rochelle and Bonnie, up to check on Sarah since she hasn't come downstairs in a while. She's hoping that she's just gonna die. And when they go up to check on her, Sarah's invocation starts working. And when Rochelle and Bonnie walk by a mirror, they both see themselves as the magic that they cast on others. So Bonnie sees herself with scars all over her face, and Rochelle sees herself with her hair falling out. And that really freaks the two of them out, so they both run out of the house. And now, having not heard from them for a while, Nancy goes up herself to go check on Sarah. And when she gets to Sarah's room, Sarah ends up walking out of the mirror to confront Nancy. And she tells Nancy that she's invoked the power of Madone and that he's got a message for her.
He says you've abused what he's given you, and now you're gonna have to pay the price.
And now Nancy starts to have cockroaches coming out of her shirt. Her fingers are turning into snakes. She's got all of these scary creatures crawling all over her, and she's totally freaking out. And Sarah says,
"Relax, it's only magic."
And so now that Nancy's terrified, she starts apologizing to Sarah, begging for her forgiveness. And then Sarah starts casting the binding spell on Nancy so that she can't do any harm onto others anymore. And Nancy really doesn't like this. This really sets her off. So she starts just running at Sarah with her knife, trying to stab her. But Sarah's magic is much more powerful than Nancy's magic. Remember, she's invoked the spirit of Madone, and she finally ends up thrashing Nancy into this mirror with all of this broken glass. And that's the end of their fight. So now we flash to the next day. Sarah is walking around her house. She's putting flowers out into their front yard, and Rochelle and Bonnie end up showing up to her house to apologize. They apologize for trying to kill her and everything. They let her know that they don't have powers anymore and that they would love to be friends with her if she ever just wants to hang out again, which Sarah's like not vibing with any of that because again, they tried to kill her last night. So sorry if she doesn't really feel like she wants to be their friend. And then Rochelle turns to Bonnie and is like, oh, she probably doesn't even have powers anymore. And then all of a sudden Sarah summons this big thunderstorm. Lightning strikes a tree and a big branch falls in front of them. And she says, be careful girls, you don't want to end up like Nancy. And then it flashes to Nancy in a mental institution. And she's screaming about how she has the power of Madone and she can fly. And obviously everyone in the mental institution thinks she's crazy. But that is our not so happy little ending to The Craft. All right, that's the end of the movie. I'm trying to do my Nancy dance. smile. You know how she has that like big crazy smile she does? Oh, I love it so much. I feel so powerful in this look. I know I said I was gonna try to keep it true to the character. I definitely went a little more dramatic as always. I can't help myself. You know, once you start with the black eyeliner and black eyeshadow, it really is difficult to stop. But I will say, of all the parts of this look that I didn't really expect to like, I really like how the lip turned out. I used my black gel eyeliner as lip liner, and then I used this KDV vinyl lip lacquer to fill it in. This is the shade Hollyhock, and I love this lip combo. Look how pretty. Now, is it the neatest lip application in the world? No, absolutely not, but I do really like the way it looks. I feel very powerful. How many times can I say I feel powerful? But I do. I can't help it. What'd you guys think of the craft? Have you seen it before, or is this your first time hearing the story? If this is your first time hearing the story, definitely go watch it. It's free on Hulu if you have a Hulu account. And I thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and I'm gonna be posting spooky movie reviews and makeup transformations all month long. So let me know what spooky movies you want me to review next. Check out my description box for all of the makeup details of the makeup I used today. Also in my description box, I'll have a bunch of Black Lives Matter resources to support the Asian American community, and resources to support the LGBTQ+ community. So please check those out if you haven't yet. And I thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Jealous? You think I'm jealous?